There was a time in America when a family could sit down to breakfast, lunch, and supper without spending much money at all. The cupboards weren't always full. Paychecks didn't always stretch very far. Yet somehow, mothers and grandmothers turned the simplest ingredients into meals people still remember decades later. A bowl of something warm before school. A sandwich that carried a worker through a long shift. A supper that brought everyone to the table, no matter how hard the week had been. Most of these foods have vanished. Not because they weren't good, but because the world changed, and the people who knew how to make them quietly disappeared. Today, we're taking a trip back to the 1950s to rediscover 60 forgotten foods that poor American families relied on from breakfast to dinner. Some will bring back memories. Some may surprise you. And a few might make you wonder why we ever stopped eating them in the first place. So pull up a chair, and let's remember what America used to taste like. Number 1. Fried bread dough. This is the oldest trick in the book. Flour, water, salt, a pinch of leavening, the same dough your grandmother made for dinner rolls, stretched thin and dropped into a skillet of hot fat where it puffed immediately, blistered golden on the bottom, inflated into something that crackled when you tore it open and steamed from the inside like it was alive. 5 cents. Less than 5 cents on a bad week. Every culture on earth has a version of this. Every culture on earth arrived at the same conclusion independently, that flour and fat and heat produce something that transcends every boundary of cuisine and class and century. This was the last resort breakfast. The nothing left in the house breakfast. And it was magnificent. Number 2. Scrapple. Everything left after the hog was butchered, the scraps of meat clinging to the skull, the liver, the heart, the tongue, simmered for hours with onion, bay leaf, and more black pepper than seemed reasonable. Strained, shredded, bound with cornmeal, poured into loaf pans overnight. By morning, firm and sliceable. Into a cast iron skillet, untouched, unrushed, until the crust went mahogany and shattered under a fork like a promise kept. 20 cents. A week of breakfasts. Today, Philadelphia chefs serve it at $32 a plate, and call it a heritage preparation. It was always a heritage preparation. The heritage was just poor. And the people who made it wasted absolutely nothing. Number 3. Milk toast. Somewhere in the 20th century, milk toast became an insult. Spineless. Bland. Ineffectual. The word came directly from this dish, and that rebranding is one of the small, specific cultural cruelties of the last 100 years. Because what actually happened was this. Bread toasted just past golden, warm buttered milk poured slow into the bowl, nutmeg scraped across the top, the bread drinking the liquid from the bottom while the crust held just barely together. Hospitals served it. Mothers made it at 2 in the morning for children who couldn't keep anything else down. It was therapeutic food. Gentle food. And we turned its gentleness into a punchline. That is not a food story. That is a character assassination. Number 4. Johnny cakes. Colonial soldiers carried them in their coat pockets. Westward migrants packed them in wagon beds. The name comes from journey cake, corrupted by time and accent, because this was food engineered to go wherever the people went. Cornmeal, boiling water, salt, bacon grease, dropped onto a screaming hot griddle and left alone until the edges formed a crust the color of a new penny that shattered when you pressed it. Dense, sweet, sustaining. 8 cents for a family of 5. The same corn cake appears in Native American, African American, New England, and Caribbean traditions simultaneously, because corn fed everyone and crossed every boundary people tried to draw around food. IHOP charges $11 for a pancake. The pancake never crossed an ocean in a soldier's pocket. Number 5. Rice and milk. No sizzle. No screaming fat. No smoke. Just leftover white rice warmed in the last of the milk, a spoon of sugar stirred in, a pinch of cinnamon if the tin wasn't empty. That was it. And in the poorest households, in the deepest stretches of hard years that were still living in people's bodies well into the 1950s, this was not a backup plan. This was Tuesday. The children who ate it don't remember poverty. They remember the specific warmth of a specific bowl on a specific cold morning. Someone woke up before them and made sure there was something hot waiting. You cannot put that in a box. You cannot put that on a shelf. Number 6. Grits with red-eye gravy. Pour cold black coffee into a skillet of screaming hot ham drippings, and the sound it makes is violent. A hiss, a spit, a cloud of steam that smells simultaneously like breakfast and something ancient. Scrape the bottom fast. Every caramelized bit of cured pork releases into the liquid, and in 90 seconds you have something thin, dark, and devastatingly complex that costs absolutely nothing because the coffee was already made and the drippings were already there. Over stone-ground grits, slow cooked until the spoon stands up. 12 cents. In communities where cash was genuinely scarce, this plate meant something had gone right. Ham was preserved protein. Ham was survival infrastructure. Between 1950 and 1970, cereal companies ran coordinated campaigns, not just selling product, but selling shame. One generation of mothers convinced that the skillet meant backwardness. That's all it took. One generation. Number 7. Tomato gravy over biscuits. Nobody put this one on a food truck. Nobody gave it a rebrand. Bacon grease, a roux pushed just past golden, then home-canned tomatoes from the cellar shelf, put up back in August when the garden was heavy and the kitchen was hot. They hit the pan and the whole skillet erupts. Steam, sputtering fat, sharp bright acid meeting heat. Then it settles. Dark, rough-edged, rust-red. Poured over split biscuits until the bread drinks it from the bottom up. A dime. A literal dime on the worst week of the year. Tomato gravy never trended because it doesn't photograph pretty. It just fed people who had no margin for anything that didn't work. Number 8. Cornmeal mush. 19 cents bought a family of 5 breakfasts for an entire week. Not one morning. 7. Stone-ground cornmeal stirred into salted boiling water until the surface bubbled slow and heavy, and the whole kitchen smelled like warm earth. Eaten hot with butter and molasses. But here is the genius. You poured the leftovers into a loaf pan overnight. By morning it had set firm. You sliced it cold, laid it in bacon grease, and the outside crisped into a golden shell that crackled under a fork while the inside stayed soft and steaming. Same 19 cents. Completely different meal. Zero additional cost. Today restaurants charge $16 for the Italian version and call it polenta. Number 9. Biscuits and gravy. They called it sawmill gravy because it fed men who felled trees in the Appalachian cold before sunrise. Pork sausage crumbled back into its own rendered fat. Flour stirred in fast, then milk, slow, steady, until the skillet thickened into something that smelled like the inside of a smokehouse and tasted like it was invented by someone who understood exactly what a human body needs at 5 in the morning. Poured over lard biscuits that shattered when you pressed them open. 15 cents. The whole pan. Today that same plate sits at $18 on a reclaimed wood table under Edison bulbs with a sprig of rosemary on top that nobody asked for. Number 10. Fried egg sandwich. Bacon grease, saved in a tin on the back of the stove, because nothing got wasted. Ever. One egg hits that screaming hot fat, and the whites go lacy, crisp-edged, golden underneath while the yolk stays barely runny in the center. Salt. Pepper. 2 slices of white bread. Done. 9 cents. Enough protein and fat to carry a man through 6 hours at the plant before he even thought about lunch. Today you'll pay $9 for the same architecture on brioche with sriracha aioli and a menu description that uses the word artisanal twice. Same egg. Same bread. Same hungry person. Just a different story about who made it and why it disappeared. Number 11. The tuna salad sandwich. Tuna salad is so ubiquitous that we forget it was once a revelation. When canned tuna arrived on American shelves in the early 20th century, it changed the economics of the family lunch table permanently. By the 1970s, it was in every kitchen in the country, and every kitchen had its own version, its own ratios, its own secret additions that made it distinctly theirs. The fundamental: tuna drained and flaked, mayonnaise worked in with a fork until creamy and cohesive, was just the beginning. Then came the additions. Finely diced celery that snapped beneath the teeth. sweet pickle relish. A spoonful of yellow mustard gave it a gentle sharpness. Hard-boiled egg chopped into to stretch the mixture further and make each scoop more substantial. Sometimes, a spoonful of diced apple, which sounds unusual until you try it and understand that the sweetness cuts the brine perfectly. Mounted onto white bread. Covered with the second slice and cut corner to corner. Eaten at the kitchen counter by a woman who had already fed 3 other people and was finally, quietly, taking her own moment. The tuna salad sandwich mastered itself over 100 years in American kitchens. And it is better than anything that has ever been sold to you in a plastic triangle at a gas station. Let that be said plainly. Number 12. The salmon patty sandwich. Friday was fish day in many American homes, Catholic or not. There was something about the rhythm of the week, the way Sunday was for abundance and Friday was for discipline, that made simple fish a natural and dignified close to the working week. The canned salmon came out of the pantry. Pink salmon, the less expensive variety, drained carefully and picked through with patient fingers, your grandmother's hands moving through it to find any remaining bones, pressing them between her fingertips with the casual expertise of 40 years of practice. Mixed with a beaten egg, crushed saltine crackers for binding, diced onion, a spoonful of yellow mustard, salt and pepper worked in with a fork. The patties were pressed between her palms, each one uniform, each one the same careful thickness, and set into the cast iron skillet in a pool of vegetable shortening already shimmering with heat. The smell that rose from that skillet was the smell of Friday evening, of a week almost finished, of something earned. Golden brown on both sides, pressed onto white bread with a squeeze of lemon if the week had been kind enough to have one. That sandwich was the punctuation at the end of a long sentence. It said we made it to Friday. That was enough. That was everything. Number 13. The deviled ham sandwich. The little can with the red devil on it. Underwood deviled ham. That image, the small fork-tailed figure grinning from the white label, was a fixture in the canned goods aisle of every A&P, every Piggly Wiggly, every corner grocery store in America for most of the 20th century. Inside that can was a finely ground ham spread, smooth, salty, with a mild heat from mustard and spice that gave it just enough personality to make you pay attention. Mixed with a little mayonnaise and perhaps a spoonful of sweet pickle relish, spread generously on white or rye bread with a crisp leaf of lettuce, it became something genuinely satisfying. Working mothers kept a few of these cans in the back of the pantry for the days when nothing else was planned and lunch needed to happen in 5 minutes. Single men kept them in the apartment for exactly the same reason. They were the original fast food, but the original fast food had 100 years of canned meat tradition behind it, and it tasted like something real. Something made by someone who understood salt and smoke and the honest nature of pork. The little devil smiled. And you were fed. That was the deal. Number 14. The pimento cheese sandwich. In the American South, pimento cheese is not a sandwich filling. It is a religion. It is a birthright. It is the thing your aunt made for every family gathering, every church social, every Sunday afternoon that stretched long and hot into the evening, and it was always gone first. Sharp cheddar, real sharp cheddar, grated by hand on the box grater that lived in the kitchen drawer, combined with enough mayonnaise to bring it together, diced pimento peppers from the little jar, a pinch of salt, a crack of black pepper, and in some households a whisper of cayenne that made it breathe. Spread thick on white bread and left at room temperature long enough that the cheese softened slightly, and the bread absorbed the first layer of the mixture. Eaten at the kitchen table or handed through a screen door or packed into a wax paper square for the church potluck cooler. The women who made pimento cheese never measured anything. The ratios lived in their hands, in the feeling of the mixture as it came together. Every family's version tasted slightly different from every other family's version. And every family believed absolutely that theirs was the correct one. They were all correct. That's the beauty of it. Number 15. The Spam sandwich. That rectangular blue and yellow can. That satisfying metallic snap of the key twisting back the lid. The soft pink block inside, smelling of salt and smoke and rendered pork in a way that was deeply, unapologetically itself. Spam arrived in American homes in 1937, and by the 1970s it was a pantry fixture in millions of households, particularly in working-class families and communities that had come of age during World War II, when canned meat was not a compromise but a genuine comfort. The Spam sandwich came two ways in most households. Cold, sliced directly from the can in neat pink rectangles, laid on bread with mustard or mayonnaise, eaten matter-of-factly at the kitchen table. Or fried, and the fried Spam sandwich was a different creature entirely. In the cast-iron skillet, Spam browned and crisped at the edges and caramelized into a golden auburn that smelled of rendered fat and salt and something close to joy. Placed on white bread with yellow mustard and a slice of American cheese that softened from the residual heat, that sandwich required no apology to any man alive. Spam has been the subject of jokes for 50 years. Those jokes were made by people who never had to be grateful for it. The families who relied on it knew exactly what it was worth. Number 16. The hot dog sandwich. Not a hot dog bun. Not a cookout. The sandwich, a boiled or pan-fried hot dog laid on plain white bread, the bread folding around it like a cradle, dressed with yellow mustard and whatever else was available. This was the weeknight supper that appeared when the week had gotten long and the refrigerator had gotten short. Your mother sliced the hot dog down the middle, butterflied it flat, and laid it in the cast-iron skillet with a small pat of butter. Let it cook until the edges curled and browned and crisped, and the whole kitchen filled with something savory and honest and warm. Placed on white bread. Yellow mustard in a thin zigzag. Maybe a ring of raw white onion if you were the kind of family that kept onions on the counter. That was dinner. On a busy Tuesday. For 4 children and one tired man who had been on his feet since 6 in the morning. And nobody complained. Because the hot dog was salty and the bread was soft, and the mustard was sharp and the whole thing was warm. That was all it needed to be. Not Instagram-worthy. Not artisanal. Just warm and honest, and made by someone who loved you. Number 17. The fluffernutter. If you grew up in New England, or anywhere north of the Mason-Dixon line where marshmallow fluff was a pantry staple the same way peanut butter was, you already feel something happening in your chest right now. Something warm and specific. Peanut butter on one slice of white bread. Marshmallow fluff on the other. Pressed together. That was the entire sandwich. And it was glorious. The peanut butter was always creamy. The Jif or Skippy your mother bought in the large jar at the A&P. The fluff was white and impossibly soft and smelled like the inside of a candy store. Together, they created a texture that was simultaneously sticky and yielding, sweet and salty, rich and light in a way that nothing manufactured since has ever quite matched. Children carried these to school and traded for lesser lunches. Adults made them on hard weekday afternoons when something sweet and easy felt like medicine. Grandmothers made them for grandchildren and called it a special treat, which it absolutely was. The fluffernutter was never poor food, even when it was poor food. It was beloved food. And beloved food feeds something deeper than hunger. Number 18. The ketchup sandwich. Let's be honest with each other right now. If you grew up in a working-class home in the 60s or 70s, if your father worked on his feet and your mother managed a household on what he brought home, you have either eaten this sandwich, or you watched a sibling eat it without saying a word. Because you understood. 2 slices of white bread. A thick, generous spread of Heinz ketchup, always Heinz, because the other brands didn't taste right, and maybe a scraping of butter or margarine beneath it if there was any. That was the whole recipe. That was the entire architecture. And yet, and this is important, it was not nothing. The ketchup was tangy and sweet and slightly vinegary, and against the soft, neutral bread it created a flavor that was vivid and immediate and real. It was not a meal that apologized for itself. It was a meal that said, I am here. I am fed. We continue. Your mother didn't hand you a ketchup sandwich out of neglect. She handed it to you because it was what she had, and because she refused to hand you nothing. That distinction matters enormously. Number 19. The banana and mayonnaise sandwich. Before you make a face, and some of you just did, hear me out. This sandwich has roots that run deep into the American South, and it was not considered unusual. It was simply lunch. A ripe banana, not green, not black, but that perfect yellow gold with just the beginning of brown freckles that tell you the sugars have fully arrived, sliced into coins, laid on soft white bread that had been spread with real mayonnaise. The combination sounds strange to modern ears raised on packaged food that tells you what flavors are supposed to go together. But the creamy, eggy richness of the mayonnaise against the soft, sweet starchiness of the banana creates something deeply satisfying, something that fills your stomach and lifts your mood at the same time. In the South especially, this was a Depression-era holdover that survived into the 70s because it worked. Bananas were among the cheapest fruits in any market. Mayonnaise was in every kitchen. Bread was always on the counter. 3 ingredients. 15 seconds. A lunch that tasted like summer and asked nothing of you in return. That is not an accident. That is accumulated wisdom. Number 20. The cinnamon toast sandwich. Not cinnamon toast as a side dish. Not cinnamon toast as a breakfast. The sandwich. 2 pieces of cinnamon toast pressed together, face to face, so that the sugared buttered sides kissed in the middle and created something warm and fragrant that was greater than the sum of its parts. Your mother made this on cold mornings. The kind of gray November morning when the school bus felt like a long, cruel walk and the house was only barely warm. The butter went on while the toast was still screaming hot, so it melted immediately and soaked deep into the bread. Then the cinnamon sugar, kept in a repurposed spice jar, the ratio worked out by years of practice, shaken over the surface in a fragrant rust-colored cloud. 2 slices pressed together. Cut diagonally. Because everything cut diagonally tasted better. That is not a myth. That is physics or love, or both. There was no lunch special in any diner in America that could touch that sandwich on a cold morning. Even when it was cold by noon, the cinnamon sugar had crystallized into a thin, sweet crust that made every single bite feel deliberate. This is what your grandmother made. Don't let anyone tell you it wasn't extraordinary. Number 21. The Vienna sausage sandwich. That little tin. You remember that little tin. The key that rolled back the lid, if it didn't break halfway, and sometimes it did. The sausages packed in there, soft and pale, swimming in their own mild brine, smelling of smoke and salt and something distinctly American in the way that only canned meat can. Those Vienna sausages were sliced lengthwise or laid whole on white bread with yellow mustard, always yellow mustard, never the fancy kind, and maybe a squirt of ketchup if you were feeling extravagant. The bread pressed flat around them. The whole thing ate quick and clean and satisfying in a way that required no apology. For a working family, that little can was a miracle. It cost almost nothing. It kept forever in the pantry. It required no refrigeration, no cooking, no preparation beyond the opening. In the summers when the power went out, and the power did go out, that can was what stood between your family and a hungry night. Armour and Libby's made a fortune selling confidence to working people. And the working people made something genuinely good out of what they were given. That's the bargain that was never printed on the label. Number 22. The Monday meatloaf sandwich. Sunday dinner was sacred in the American home of the 1970s. The meatloaf that came out of that oven on Sunday afternoon, fragrant with onion and ketchup glaze, dense and steaming, was the centerpiece of the family table. It was the meal your father sat down for. The one where grace was said and the good plates came out. But Monday was when the real magic happened. The leftover meatloaf was sliced cold, and there is something that happens to meatloaf overnight that no chef has ever been able to fully explain. The fat redistributes. The flavors deepen. It becomes something almost better than it was the night before. Sliced thick, laid between 2 pieces of white bread with yellow mustard and a single leaf of iceberg lettuce. That was the Monday lunch. Wrapped in wax paper and tucked into a paper bag or a dented metal lunchbox. Carried to the factory, the job site, the school. And when it was unwrapped at noon, every man within 10 feet looked over with genuine envy. The Monday meatloaf sandwich was proof that a good Sunday cook could feed her family twice on one investment. That's not frugality. That's mastery. Number 23. The mock chicken salad sandwich. This one is a testament to American ingenuity at its most creative, and its most quietly proud. Real chicken in the 1970s wasn't always in the budget. But tuna was cheap. Celery was cheap. Onion was cheap. And Duke's mayonnaise, well, you bought the big jar and it stretched the whole week. The mock chicken salad was built from whatever protein was available, sometimes tuna, sometimes finely chopped hard-boiled egg, mixed with diced celery for that essential crunch, a ribbon of sweet pickle relish, a spoonful of mustard, and enough mayonnaise to bind it all into something that looked, on a sandwich, remarkably like the real thing. Your mother knew it wasn't chicken. You knew it wasn't chicken. Nobody said a word. What mattered was that it was good, genuinely, sincerely good, piled high on soft bread with a leaf of iceberg lettuce that still had its cold, crisp snap. And when you bit into it, the celery gave a sound that made everything feel substantial. Made everything feel like a proper meal. That's not just cooking. That's artistry. The art of making something from almost nothing and presenting it with absolute dignity. Number 24. The cucumber and mayonnaise sandwich. This one lived in the summertime. It lived in the vegetable garden out back, the one your grandfather kept, the one that produced more cucumbers than any family could reasonably use. They came in by the armload in July and August, fat and dark green, cool to the touch even in the worst of the heat. Your grandmother would slice them thin, paper thin, almost, with a paring knife she'd been using since before your mother was born. Each slice nearly translucent. Laid out on white bread with a generous smear of Duke's or Hellmann's, real mayonnaise, the kind in the glass jar, and then a serious pinch of salt and a crack of black pepper. That sandwich was cold, and clean and bright. It tasted like the garden. It tasted like shade. On a day when the kitchen was too hot to cook anything real, this was the answer, and it was a good answer. Refreshing in a way that nothing prepackaged has ever managed to replicate, because no factory has ever figured out how to bottle the morning dew of a backyard garden. Simple. Dignified. Utterly forgotten. Number 25 is the sugar bread sandwich. And if you grew up in a working-class home in the 60s or 70s, you already know exactly what this is. 2 slices of soft white bread, Wonder Bread or its store-brand cousin, spread with a thin, careful coat of real butter or margarine, then dusted with white granulated sugar. Sometimes a shake of cinnamon if you were lucky. That was it. It wasn't a dessert. It was Tuesday. It was a dime in your mother's pocket, and 5 children to feed before supper. But here is what the food corporations don't want you to remember. That sandwich, eaten at a Formica kitchen table with a glass of cold tap water, tasted like safety. The butter melted into the soft bread. The sugar crunched between your teeth like a small, private luxury. It tasted like your mother saying, without a single word, "We are going to be just fine." No Pop-Tart has ever come close. Number 26.
Soup beans and cornbread. If there was one meal that held Appalachian families together, it was this one. Soup beans and cornbread. A pot of dried pinto beans, slow-cooked for hours until the water turned thick and rich. If there was a ham bone or a bit of fatback, it went in early, flavoring everything. If not, you made do without it. Because this meal wasn't about perfection, it was about making something out of almost nothing. Cornbread sat beside it, not as a side, but as part of the meal itself. Crumbled into the beans, soaked in the broth, filling enough to keep you going. This wasn't quick food. It stayed on the stove most of the day, feeding anyone who walked through the door. And maybe that's why people still remember it. Because it wasn't just cheap, it was dependable.
Number 27.
Cornbread and milk. Now this one might stop you for a second. Cornbread and milk, that's it. No meat, no vegetables, no seasoning beyond what was already in the bread. Just crumbled cornbread dropped into a bowl and covered with cold milk. To most people today, it sounds like a snack, maybe even something you'd only eat if there was nothing else left. But for thousands of families, this was dinner. Corn was everywhere in Appalachia. It grew well, stored easily and didn't cost much to produce. Milk, if you had a cow, was just as common. Together, they became something more than simple ingredients. They became a reliable meal, quick to prepare, filling enough to satisfy, and familiar in a way that stuck with people for life. Even now, some remember the exact taste, not because it was special, but because it was always there.
Number 28.
Poke salad with eggs. This is the kind of dish that sounds simple until you realize it could make you sick if you didn't know exactly what you were doing. Poke salad with eggs. Pokeweed grows wild across the Appalachian Hills, easy to find, completely free, and dangerous. The roots and berries are toxic. Even the leaves can be harmful if they're not prepared the right way. So people learned. The leaves had to be boiled, then drained, then boiled again. Sometimes more than once. Every round, pulling out what could hurt you. That knowledge wasn't written down. It was passed from one generation to the next, quietly, carefully. Once it was safe, the greens were fried with eggs or a bit of bacon grease. Slightly bitter, earthy, filling. To an outsider, it might seem like too much effort for a wild plant. But when food was scarce, knowing how to turn something dangerous into dinner, that wasn't just cooking. That was survival.
Number 29.
Squirrel and dumplings. This is where the menu starts to feel unfamiliar to most people today. Squirrel and dumplings, not something you'd find in a modern kitchen. But in the Appalachian woods, it made perfect sense. Squirrels were everywhere. They didn't need to be raised, fed, or bought. If you had a rifle and a little patience, you had meat. The cooking was slow and deliberate. The meat simmered in a pot until it softened, until it nearly fell off the bone. Then came the dumplings. Simple dough dropped straight into the broth. What came out wasn't fancy, but it was hearty, warm, filling in a way that lasted. And if you closed your eyes, it wouldn't be that different from chicken and dumplings. The only difference was where it came from. Because in those mountains, hunting wasn't a pastime. It was part of putting food on the table.
Number 30.
Fatback and beans. Most people today have never even heard of it. Fatback. No fancy cut, no lean meat, just a thick layer of pork fat, salted and preserved so it could last. And yet, this was one of the most important ingredients in the entire Appalachian kitchen. Because when you dropped a small piece into a pot of beans, everything changed. As it slowly cooked, the fat melted into the broth, turning plain beans into something rich, something satisfying. Not just food, a real meal. You didn't need much. In fact, you rarely had much. That was the point. Fatback stretched flavor across an entire pot. It made cheap ingredients feel complete. And when money was tight, that mattered more than anything.
Number 31.
Dandelion greens with bacon. Most people see dandelions and think one thing: weeds, something to pull out of the yard and throw away. But in the Appalachian Hills, those same plants were food. Dandelion greens, picked young before they turned too bitter, brought into the kitchen and cooked down in a pan. A little bacon grease if you had it, sometimes actual bacon if times were good. That bitterness never fully disappeared. It wasn't meant to. Because this dish wasn't about comfort, it was about nourishment. These greens were packed with vitamins, iron, and other things the body needed, especially in places where doctors were far away and store-bought food wasn't an option. So people learned to use what grew around them, to see value where others saw nothing. And over time, something as ordinary as a dandelion became part of dinner, not because it tasted amazing, but because it kept people going.
Number 32.
Chocolate gravy and biscuits. After all the struggle now and then, something sweet found its way to the table. Chocolate gravy and biscuits. And no, it wasn't what most people imagine when they hear the word gravy. This was cocoa powder, sugar, a little flour, and milk, cooked slowly until it turned into a smooth, rich sauce, then poured over fresh, hot biscuits. Simple ingredients, but together it felt like something special. This wasn't everyday food. It couldn't be. Sugar and cocoa weren't always easy to come by, and when they were used carefully. Which is exactly why this dish mattered. It showed up on mornings that felt different. Holidays, gatherings, moments when someone wanted to turn an ordinary day into something worth remembering. Because even in places where life was hard, people still made room for a little sweetness. And sometimes, that's what stayed with you the longest.
Number 33.
Tomato gravy and biscuits. Most people think gravy needs meat, drippings, fat, something heavy. But in the Appalachian kitchen, you used what the season gave you. And in summer, that meant tomatoes. Tomato gravy and biscuits started with fresh or canned tomatoes, cooked down slowly in a pan. A little flour to thicken it, a bit of fat if you had it, sometimes even a splash of milk to soften the sharpness. What you got was something unexpected, tangy, savory, rich in its own way. Poured over warm biscuits, it turned into a full meal, not a side, not an extra. A meal built almost entirely from the garden and a few pantry staples. It didn't rely on meat. It didn't need to. Because when tomatoes were in season, they carried the whole dish on their own. And for families who learned to cook with what was available, that was more than enough.
Number 34.
Rabbit stew. Before supermarkets made meat easy, it had to be found, raised, or caught. And rabbit was one of the most practical choices. Rabbit stew wasn't fancy, it didn't need to be. Wild rabbits could be hunted, and some families kept them in small backyard hutches. They didn't take much space, didn't eat much, and reproduced quickly. That made them reliable. The meat went into a pot with whatever was on hand: potatoes, onions, maybe a few carrots or root vegetables from the garden. Then it all simmered, slowly, until everything softened and blended together. A single rabbit didn't look like much at first, but after hours in that pot, it turned into something that could feed an entire family. That was the goal. Not abundance, but stretching what you had as far as it could go. Because in those times, making a little feel like enough was its own kind of skill.
Number 35.
Onion sandwich. This might be the simplest meal on the entire list, and for some people, the hardest to understand. An onion sandwich. Just thick slices of raw onion placed between two pieces of bread. A pinch of salt. Maybe a little mustard if it was around. No cooking, no preparation, no cost beyond what was already in the kitchen. To modern ears, it sounds extreme, but this wasn't about taste. It was about reality. There were days when time was short, money was tighter, and you still had to put something on the table. And this did the job. Sharp, strong, filling enough to get through the day. It's easy to look back and see only hardship in a meal like this, but for the people who lived it, there was something else there too. A quiet determination. Because even with almost nothing, they still found a way to eat.
Number 36.
Saltine crackers and milk. A bowl. A handful of saltine crackers broken by hand. Cold milk poured over the top until everything just starts to float. Some people added sugar, most didn't. This was what you ate when there was nothing left to decide. No stove, no waiting. Just sit down and eat. In the 1930s, this showed up in kitchens because it was cheap and filling. Crackers lasted. Milk was already in the house. Together, they turned into something soft enough to eat slowly, even if your teeth weren't what they used to be. For someone living alone, this wasn't breakfast or dinner. It was what you made late at night when the house was quiet and you didn't feel like cooking for one. The crackers softened. The milk got a little thick. And for a few minutes, that bowl did exactly what it needed to do.
Number 37.
Cinnamon toast, one slice of bread, butter spread all the way to the edges, a shake of cinnamon, a light layer of sugar, under the broiler for a minute or two until the top starts to bubble and turn brown. That was it. This showed up in kitchens for decades because it didn't ask much from you. No recipe to remember, no cleanup to think about. Just Bread, heat, and something sweet. People kept making it long after they didn't need to. Not because it was special, but because it was familiar. The kind of thing you could make the same way every time without thinking. For someone alone, it filled a small gap in the day. Something warm, something quick, something that made the kitchen feel used again, even if only for a few minutes. You took it out too early or too late sometimes, ate it anyway.
Number 38.
Bread and butter with sugar. A slice of soft white bread. Butter spread thick enough to hold something. Then, a layer of plain sugar scattered over the top. Some folded it, some ate it open-faced. No heat, no waiting. This wasn't something you planned to make. It happened when you wanted something sweet and didn't feel like doing anything about it. Everything was already there. Bread on the counter, butter within reach, sugar in a jar that never really emptied. In a lot of homes, this showed up in the middle of the afternoon. Not quite a meal, not quite a treat. Just enough to carry you to the next time you had to think about food. It made a little mess, sugar slipping off if you held it too long, so you ate it standing up or over the sink before it had the chance to fall apart.
Number 39.
Tomato sandwich. 2 slices of white bread. A thick slice of tomato right in the middle. A swipe of mayonnaise, a little salt, maybe pepper if it was nearby. That was all it needed. This only really worked when tomatoes were good, soft, a little messy, the kind that made the bread soak through before you finished. You didn't toast anything, you didn't fix it, you just ate it while it was falling apart. Most people didn't even sit down for this one. You stood near the sink, leaning forward slightly, catching the juice before it hit the floor. In a lot of homes, this wasn't called a recipe. It was just what you made when tomatoes showed up and you didn't want to waste time turning them into something else. Did you ever eat one like that, standing at the counter, trying not to let it drip everywhere?
Number 40.
Peanut butter crackers. 2 saltine crackers. Peanut butter spread in the middle, pressed together just enough so it doesn't crack. That's it. This wasn't something you made once. It was something you made over and over without thinking. Same motion every time. Open the jar, spread, close, eat. It showed up everywhere. Kitchen tables, bedside plates, even folded in a napkin for later. You didn't need to prepare for it. You just needed to be a little hungry. For a lot of people, this was the gap filler. Not a meal, not a snack you talked about. Just something that kept you going until the next time you had to decide what to eat. And most of the time, you didn't stop at one.
Number 41.
Canned salmon on crackers. Open the can. Drain it if you feel like it. Mash it with a fork right there in the tin or in a small bowl. Maybe a little mayonnaise if it's nearby. Then spread it across a few crackers. That's all it took. This was the kind of food that stayed in the pantry for a reason. It didn't go bad. It didn't need planning. When you opened it, you already knew what you were getting. It was quiet food. No cooking sounds, no smell filling the house, just a fork, a few crackers, and something with enough weight to feel like you actually ate. For a lot of people, this replaced meals more often than they admitted. It was easier than starting from scratch. Did your family keep cans like this in the cupboard all the time, just in case?
Number 42.
Toast with bacon grease and salt. A slice of bread into the toaster. While it's still hot, a spoonful of bacon grease spread across the top. A pinch of salt, even though it didn't really need it. That was enough. The grease came from a jar that stayed by the stove. It wasn't labeled. It didn't have to be. Everyone in the house knew what it was and why it was there. This wasn't made every day. It showed up after something else had already been cooked, a way to use what was left without calling it leftovers. The toast softened almost immediately. The grease melted in. It tasted heavier than it looked. Some people grew up with that jar always sitting there. Others never saw it once. Did your kitchen ever have a jar like that by the stove, or was that something you only heard about later?
Number 43.
Rice and milk with sugar. Leftover rice, cold, straight from the pot, into a bowl, milk poured over until it barely covers it, a spoon of sugar stirred in, no reheating, no fixing. This was what happened to rice on the second day. Nobody called it a recipe. It was just what you did, so nothing went to waste. The milk turned cloudy almost instantly. The rice softened just enough to lose its shape. After a minute, it stopped feeling like leftovers and started feeling like something else entirely. It sat somewhere between a snack and something closer to comfort, quiet, filling, and easy to finish without thinking about it.
Number 44.
Crackers with potted meat. A small can opened with a quick pull, the lid bent back. A soft spread inside, already smooth, already seasoned. You took a knife, or the back of a spoon, and laid it across a few crackers. Nothing else added. This wasn't about taste looking good. It was about something that worked every time. It sat in the cupboard for months without changing. When you needed it, it was ready before you were. The texture was the same from the first bite to the last. No surprises, no effort, just steady, quiet food that did its job. It wasn't something you served to anyone. It was something you kept for yourself.
Number 45.
Bread and drippings. A slice of bread, still soft, maybe a little dry at the edges. A spoon dipped into whatever was left from the last time meat was cooked. Beef, chicken, bacon. It didn't matter. Spread across the top while it was still warm enough to move. That was it. Every jar held a different memory. One meal carried into the next without saying anything about it. Nothing wasted, nothing dressed up. The bread took it in fast. Dark spots where the flavor settled, lighter ones where it didn't reach. You noticed it with each bite, even if you weren't thinking about it. This wasn't made from ingredients. It was made from what was left behind. And somehow, that made it feel like more.
Number 46. Chipped beef sandwich. Dried beef. Shaved paper thin. Creamed in a white sauce of butter, flour, and whole milk, then spooned over a slice of white toast on an oval plate. Not fancy. Not trying to be. Veterans called it something unprintable. Lunch counter menus called it creamed chipped beef on toast. Either way, every cook in America knew the recipe by heart and could put it in front of you in under 4 minutes. It cost about 35 cents. It came out fast. And it was exactly what it promised to be. The beef was intensely salty, the kind of salt that hits the back of your jaw and makes you sit up straighter. The cream sauce tamed it. The toast absorbed everything underneath until the center turned soft and almost custard-like, while the edges stayed just crisp enough to hold together under the weight of the ladle. By 1960, this appeared on more lunch counter menus than roast beef. Factory workers ate it at 11:30. Office men ate it at noon. Nobody talked about it like it was special because it didn't need to be. It just needed to be there. Then dried chipped beef disappeared from most grocery stores in the 1980s. The sandwich went with it. Now it exists only in the memory of veterans and the children who sat beside their fathers and watched them clean the plate without a single word of complaint. Number 47. Liverwurst sandwich. Braunschweiger liverwurst on pumpernickel. A thin smear of yellow mustard. A single slice of raw onion. That was it. And it was magnificent. German, Polish, and Czech immigrants carried this sandwich to factory lunch pails across the industrial Midwest, and it crossed over to every lunch counter within a 10-block radius of every plant, every mill, and every rail yard in America. The liverwurst was smooth and spreadable, richly flavored with liver and pork and spices that had been perfected in European butcher shops over centuries before they ever touched American bread. It was iron in edible form. A quarter pound cost about 20 cents in 1955. The pumpernickel was dense and dark and slightly sour. The mustard cut through the richness like a clean line. The raw onion added a sharp bite that woke up everything underneath it and made you feel like you had actually eaten something real. Lunch counters in Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh sold liver sandwiches by the hundreds. Butchers sliced it fresh from the log every single morning. It was as common as ham and cheese. Then Americans decided they didn't eat organ meat anymore. No announcement. No farewell. Just a slow collective turning away from anything that reminded people where meat actually came from. The liverwurst sandwich retreated to a handful of German delis. Then it retreated further. Now it's almost gone entirely. And the flavor it carried, that honest, unapologetic richness, went with it. Number 48. Egg salad sandwich. Hard-boiled eggs. Chopped fine with a fork, never a knife. Mixed with Hellmann's mayonnaise, a pinch of salt, a grind of black pepper, and sometimes a whisper of celery salt or a teaspoon of sweet pickle relish that nobody admitted to adding but everybody tasted. Spread thick on white bread. That was the egg salad sandwich. Eggs cost about 60 cents a dozen in 1955. A single sandwich required 2 eggs and cost the counter almost nothing to produce. They sold it for 20 cents and made a profit that kept the lights on through slow Tuesdays and rainy Fridays when nobody wanted to leave the office. The filling was pale yellow, creamy, and mild. It offended absolutely no one. Children ordered it. Grandmothers ordered it. Construction workers ate 2 of them with a bowl of soup and called it a full meal without irony or apology. Egg salad was the Switzerland of the sandwich board. Completely neutral. Universally accepted. The one thing on the menu that nobody argued about because there was nothing to argue about. The counter girl made a full bowl of it every morning. Fresh. By hand. Gone by noon. When lunch counters closed, egg salad retreated to gas station coolers in plastic triangles sealed with a sticker, sitting under fluorescent light for 3 days before anyone touched them. That plastic triangle shares a name with what the counter girl made. It shares nothing else. Number 49. Club sandwich. 3 slices of toasted white bread. Turkey, bacon, lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise layered between them. Cut into 4 triangles. Held together with frilled toothpicks that made the whole thing look like it was dressed for an occasion. Because it was. The club sandwich was the most expensive item on most lunch counter menus. 50 to 65 cents. You ordered it on payday. You ordered it when you closed the deal. You ordered it when you wanted the woman behind the counter to know that today was a good day. The triple-decker construction made it feel like an event. Every layer was visible from the side, a cross-section of American abundance stacked 3 stories high on a white china plate. The bacon was crisp. The turkey was real, pulled from a bird roasted that morning. The tomato was thick enough to hold its place between the second and third slice without sliding. And those toothpicks. Nobody needed them structurally. They were purely ceremonial. A small flag planted at the top of something worth celebrating. The club sandwich supposedly originated at a gentleman's club in the late 1800s. But by the 1950s it belonged to the lunch counter completely. It was the sandwich that said you were doing alright without saying a single word. Today it appears on hotel room service menus between the French onion soup and the $14 brownie. It survives. But the version built by a counter cook who toasted all 3 slices simultaneously and assembled it in under a minute without looking down, that version is gone. Number 50. Grilled cheese sandwich. 2 slices of white bread. Buttered on the outside. 2 slices of Kraft American cheese in the middle. Pressed flat on a hot griddle until the bread turned the exact shade of gold that cannot be planned, only recognized. Until the cheese melted into an orange river that sealed the edges shut and sent a smell across the counter that made every person in the building turn their head without meaning to. That was the grilled cheese. The single most ordered sandwich at Woolworth's lunch counters nationwide. It cost 20 cents. Children ate it after shopping with their mothers. Adults ate it alongside a bowl of tomato soup for the most iconic lunch combination in American history. And the cook made them in batches of 4, pressing each one down with a flat spatula until the cheese wept out the sides and crisped against the griddle into something that food scientists would spend decades trying to replicate and never quite manage. The sound of that sandwich hitting a hot griddle. The hiss of the butter making contact. That sound was the soundtrack of every 5 and dime in the country from Bangor to Bakersfield. When the last Woolworths closed in 1997, a version of the grilled cheese survived. It survived everywhere, actually. Every diner, every brunch menu, every food truck with a clever name. But they changed it. Sourdough instead of white bread. Gruyere instead of American. Truffle oil. Caramelized onions. House made this and artisanal that. Better ingredients. Worse sandwich. The original needed nothing except heat and time, and someone who had made 10,000 of them, and knew exactly when to flip. Number 51.
Macaroni and ketchup. In the middle of the 1930s, there were nights when a proper tomato sauce simply wasn't an option. Fresh tomatoes spoiled too quickly, and canned ones cost more than many families could spare. But a small bottle of ketchup sat quietly on the table, already paid for, already open. So it became dinner. A pot of elbow macaroni would boil on the stove until soft, then be drained and returned to the same warm pot. A few spoonfuls of ketchup were stirred in, sometimes with a bit of fat if there was any left from earlier meals. The color turned a pale red, almost pink, coating every piece just enough to feel like something more than plain pasta. It worked because it filled the gap. Sweet, tangy, and familiar, it convinced children they were eating something complete. This was the meal that showed up when cupboards were nearly empty and payday hadn't arrived yet.
Number 52.
Bacon grease spaghetti. There was almost always a small tin near the stove, quietly collecting what others might have thrown away. Bacon grease, saved from breakfasts long gone, was never wasted. It was too valuable for that. On certain evenings, that tin became the entire flavor of supper. Spaghetti would be cooked until tender, then poured straight into a hot pan where a spoonful of that saved grease waited. The heat melted it instantly, slipping into every strand. Sometimes a bit of garlic found its way in, sometimes not. Most times, it was just salt, pepper, and what that grease already carried with it. It worked because nothing needed to be bought. The richness was already there, stored from another meal, stretched into this one. The smell was deep and smoky, filling small kitchens with something that felt heavier than it really was. This was the kind of dinner made without planning, just memory and habit.
Number 53.
Noodles with cottage cheese. There were moments when meat was gone, eggs were scarce, and even butter had to be measured carefully. But dairy, simple, unfashionable dairy, sometimes lingered in the icebox a little longer than anything else. Cottage cheese was one of those things people didn't reach for first, which is exactly why it was still there. A pot of wide noodles would be cooked soft, then turned out into a bowl while still steaming. A scoop of cottage cheese was folded in, not melted completely, just warmed enough to soften at the edges. If there was a bit of butter, it went in. If not, the noodles carried it on their own. It worked because it added substance without cost, protein without meat, a quiet kind of nourishment. The texture was unusual, creamy in places, firm in others, but it was filling in a way that stayed with you. In many immigrant kitchens, this wasn't considered strange at all. It was simply what you made when there was enough to get by.
Number 54.
Macaroni with peas. There were evenings when the goal wasn't to be clever. It was simply to get something on the table before the light faded and the children grew restless. 2 cans in the cupboard could solve that problem faster than anything else. One of macaroni, one of peas. The macaroni would cook quickly, bubbling away while the peas waited their turn. Then everything went together, peas, liquid and all, mixed into the pasta with whatever small bit of fat could be spared. Nothing was drained twice, nothing was wasted. It worked because it was fast and dependable, a full pot in minutes, using only what was already there. The peas brought a soft sweetness, breaking up the plainness of the noodles just enough to keep it from feeling empty. This was the kind of supper made on busy nights, before chores, before church, before anyone had time to complain.
Number 55.
Sour cream noodles. In some households, especially among Eastern European families, there was always a small container tucked in the coldest corner of the icebox. Sour cream, plain, inexpensive, and often overlooked, waited there longer than most foods. On certain nights it became the whole meal. Wide noodles would be cooked until tender, then drained and left steaming in the pot. A spoonful of sour cream was stirred in while everything was still hot, loosening into a smooth coating that clung to each ribbon. Sometimes a little butter joined it, sometimes just salt to bring it together. It worked because it turned very little into something that felt complete. No meat, No sauce, just warmth and enough richness to satisfy. The taste was gently tangy, the texture soft and silky without being heavy. This was often a quiet supper, eaten at the end of a long day, when stretching what you had mattered more than anything else.
Number 56.
Spaghetti with milk gravy. In parts of rural America, tomatoes weren't always waiting in the pantry. They came in season, and when they were gone, they were gone. But milk, when there was a cow nearby, was something families understood how to use. So spaghetti took a different path. The noodles were boiled as usual, soft and plain, then laid into a plate while a skillet worked beside them. A bit of saved fat warmed first, then flour stirred in until it thickened. Milk followed slowly, turning everything into a pale, smooth gravy with a heavy shake of black pepper. It worked because it replaced what wasn't there. No red sauce, no cheese, just a way to make pasta feel like a full meal. The texture was thick and coating, the flavor mild but comforting in its own way. For many families, this wasn't unusual at all. It was simply how spaghetti was supposed to taste.
Number 57.
Mock chicken noodle soup. There were days when someone at the table wasn't well, or the weather turned sharp and cold, and a warm bowl of soup felt necessary. But chicken wasn't always there to make it happen. So families found another way. A pot of water went on the stove, heated with a bouillon cube if one could be spared. An onion might be sliced in, maybe a carrot or a piece of celery if anything fresh remained. Then a handful of broken noodles was dropped in, softening as the broth took shape. It worked because it created the feeling of something richer than it was. A suggestion of chicken without the cost of it. The smell carried a gentle warmth, enough to fill a small kitchen and settle a restless stomach. This was the soup made when comfort mattered more than accuracy, when what people needed wasn't perfection, just something warm to hold on to.
Number 58.
Macaroni with stewed onions. Onions were one of the few things that almost never disappeared from the kitchen. Cheap, dependable, and able to last for weeks, they waited quietly until everything else ran out. And then they became the meal. Sliced thin and placed into a pan, the onions were cooked slowly, far longer than most people would expect. They softened, darkened, and slowly turned sweet, losing their sharpness as they broke down. When they were ready, they were poured over a bowl of hot macaroni, soaking into every curve. It worked because time replaced ingredients. What started as something simple became something deeper, almost rich, without adding anything extra. The smell was warm and slightly sweet, filling the room long before dinner was served. This was a patient kind of cooking, made on evenings when there was nowhere else to be and nothing else to use.
Number 59.
Lima beans and noodles. Dried beans were the kind of food that stayed in the cupboard when everything else came and went. They didn't spoil quickly, and they could feed a family more than once if handled right. Lima beans in particular showed up often. They would be soaked overnight, then simmered slowly until soft, sometimes with a bit of onion, if one was available. Once they were ready, cooked noodles were folded in, letting the starch from both settle together into something thicker than expected. It worked because it stretched in two directions at once: protein from the beans, bulk from the noodles, a full pot that could last beyond a single meal. The texture leaned soft and hearty with a quiet creaminess that didn't need milk to exist. This was the kind of supper that stayed on the stove, ready for anyone who came back hungry later.
Number 60.
Macaroni salad. Not every meal during those years came from a hot stove. In the warmer months, when kitchens grew heavy with heat and fuel had to be saved, families turned to something cooler, something already made from what was left behind. Leftover macaroni rarely went to waste. It would be mixed with whatever could be found: a chopped egg, a bit of celery, maybe a spoonful of relish if there was a jar in the cupboard. A small amount of mayonnaise brought it together, just enough to bind everything into a single bowl. It worked because it reused what was already there. Nothing new had to be cooked, nothing extra had to be spent. The texture was soft with a slight crunch, the flavor mild but steady, easy to eat without much thought. This was often served in the evening when the day's heat hadn't quite left the house, and a cold meal felt like the only sensible choice. Those meals were never meant to impress anyone. They were made quietly, out of habit, out of need, out of whatever happened to be left at the end of the week. And yet, they carried families through some of the hardest years most people would ever know. Today, they might seem too simple, maybe even a little strange. But there's something steady about them, something honest. Chances are, a few of these flavors haven't completely disappeared. They're still sitting somewhere in memory, on an old plate, at an old table. So I'm curious, which one of these would you actually try? And if this kind of story feels familiar to you, you can stay a while longer. There's more like it waiting.